This is ContactTalkRadio.com, consciousness in action, and you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio. Welcome to Life Mastery with Todd Allen, the talk radio show that dives into the science of higher consciousness. Join Todd and his guests weekly at 10 a.m. Pacific Time and learn how to live a peaceful life with intentional mastery. Enjoy a survey of inspiring topics such as abundance, intention, health, manifestation, love, and transformation. It's all right here. Leading authors, speakers, coaches, entrepreneurs with stories and messages to support your well-being, let alone your most evocative dreams.
Hey, it's another groovy day, and most of you already know that's because I make it that way. When I get up in the morning before my feet hit the ground, I've already decided that the whole day is going to be groovy, and then I take right off into it. Things might change, things might happen, but I always think back. I started out groovy. We can turn this around and make it even groovier. Welcome to Life Mastery Radio, the talk show that brings you great thoughts and ideas for you to use on your very own life mastery journey. As always, before we get started, I like to get myself a little centered and situated. And think about, this is what I want you to do. Think about what it is that you connect to. What is it that you connect to? Could be God, could be Allah, could be the dude, could be the door handle that leads you out into the world. But think about that and just focus on that for a minute, and let's take in a deep breath. All the way down. And then just let that breath out with a big and just let that connection flow up through your heart center, throat chakra, out of your speaker box and out into the universe. And think about that connection. Connect to it. I'm connected to it. And if you connected to it, then we both are connected to it. Let's do that one more time. But this time, think about your dreams, visions, and goals. What is it that you aspire to do, be, and have? Anchor that in your mind, taking a deep breath all the way down. Another big and let those dreams, visions, and goals flow right out of your speaker box out into the universe. Now here's the deal. Allow the universe the opportunity to make those come true for you. That means we got to have our chin up, tail out from between our legs, just looking for those opportunities, because I guarantee you, if you think about that and are open to it, they're coming your way, and you got to be able to be ready to grab them as they come. I know our guest today has that same thought and ideas, and we'll talk about that a little bit today. I want to remind our listeners that today's show page is at www.lifemasteryradio.net or .com. Any links that we talk about will be posted there after the show. The link to our guests' webpage is there, so you don't have to worry about writing anything down. I'm also lucky today. I have another cool friend. Well, I just met her a couple weeks ago. I had her on the show, the Prosperity Pro. Is it Prosperity Pro, Heather?
It is Prosperity Pro. Thanks for inviting me to be your co-host.
Yeah, well, I thought, Jackie's not here, and I really dug your energy when you were on the show here a couple weeks ago, and I thought, you know what, let's just throw it out there and see. Sorry it was kind of late. I didn't get a hold of you until yesterday, but you agreed to come on, and hey, here we are. We're going to have a blast.
I dug your energy too. You have this awesome 70s vibe with your groovy going on. I love it.
Well, I was born, a little bit before the 70s, so that was all part of my world, and astronauts walking on the moon and all of that. It's just, and here we are 50 years later, and we still haven't been back. It just blows me away.
Yeah, which makes you wonder, is the conspiracy theory true? Did they fake it?
No. I don't believe that. We're going back, and I think they're going to have a great time. what else can you tell us, Heather? Is there anything going on in your world?
I actually just left a class I was teaching, and where we ended it was I was telling them about how I help people to increase their wealth. But the problem is a lot of people have a teacup size for their wealth. Like you've played, have you ever played video games like Zelda?
Sure. Oh, that
Or
goes
you know,
way back.
yeah. So those little containers you get for the hearts, and you can only collect as many hearts as you have containers, right? So you have to get more containers. Well, it works like that with your wealth, right? Like if you only have 3 containers, doesn't matter how much wealth you come across, you can't hold on to more than 3 containers worth, right? So that's where we ended the course. So talking about, instead of having a teacup, let's get you bigger, which I know is one of your ways of thinking of things too.
Let's see, maybe wealth will come up in our discussion today. Are you ready for the show? So you haven't been my co-host before, but it just kind of goes back and forth. And if something pops into your mind that you want to know about and want to ask Jillian, then we'll play ping pong with the questions. That's what we'll do. And
well, I know wealth is going to come up for sure when you're talking about Feng Shui.
That's true. Oh, let's see if I can find my notes here. You ready for the show? Here we go. Our guest today is Jillian Rothschild-Scholar. And Jillian is a classically trained Feng Shui expert who has been working in private Feng Shui consultancy since 2010. She helps people who are feeling tormented with big unanswered life questions, but are unable to choose which direction to go. So they are looking for someone they can trust to get clarity, enabling them to confidently move forward. She specializes in collaborating with clients over time to awaken new possibilities and assist each client in achieving both personal and professional goals. As a part of her classical feng shui work, she consults for both residential and business properties worldwide. Jillian combines modern, practical solutions with the authentic feng shui perspective to successfully collaborate with her clients in personal and business matters. Welcome to the show, Jillian. Does that kind of put you on this pedestal after I read your introduction there?
Lord, I hope not. I'm pretty grounded. I just do what I love. I love to help people. So I feel like I'm just doing what I'm called to do.
Yeah, that's very cool. Feng Shui is such an interesting, I've had a few guests on the show, and I always think, I should really look into that a little bit. But so maybe after today's show, you're going to convince me to Feng Shui my area. Maybe it needs a little work behind me.
Well, I don't feel like I should have to convince you. If you're called to it, if you feel like you need some support, if there's some area of your life that is out of balance, then maybe it's something to look into.
Yeah. Well, let's give a little background, shall we? Let's
Sure.
Tell us a little bit. I was stalking you today.
Oh.
I was listening to some of your other podcasts, and you claim to be a weird kid, and I think we're all weird kids. But tell us a little bit about growing up. I was really into I call them shelf help books now, because mostly they end up on the shelf, right?
Yes. I went through a shelf help book period of life after I graduated college, and I feel like I was trying to find myself. And that was after I was sort of a weird kid. I remember arguing with my dad over the newspaper, because in our town, I was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, the birthplace of aviation. So you're talking about landing on the moon. There's a lot of Air Force moon landing things happening in Ohio. That's kind of a big deal. And I remember arguing with my dad about the newspaper, because the same page that had the horoscope had the crossword puzzle, and he wanted the crossword puzzle and I wanted the horoscope page. That was like my first memory of being interested in anything sort of alternative, if you will. And then it grew into being a teenager and like tarot cards and herbs and astrology. And I was not into dating and boys and fashion, and I didn't really feel like I belonged to like a group. I wasn't in the debate club or I don't know. I wasn't a cheerleader. I never really felt like I had a clique. That I was just sort of even in the lunchroom, I have, horrid memories of being in the lunchroom in high school and like trying to figure out where I was going to sit and have lunch and who I was going to hang out with.
Right.
That's rough.
Yeah. I mean, so I was a little bit of a weird kid, but I let that weirdness guide me, right? So I went to college, I found a path. After college, I discovered Reiki, and then I went into my self-help period, right? So I feel like I read every self-help book, and somewhere in there, I got a Feng Shui book and thought that that was really cool. And over time, thought I could do it by myself. That didn't happen because it's never all in a book. Like I had a few books and I was like, why is this so confusing? Why can't I get this?
Did Feng Shui really click with you? Was it like your calling? I mean, or did you have to work at it a little bit?
Well, I definitely had to work at it because it was sort of like remembering something I already knew. But when I actually look back at being a much smaller child, I rearranged my furniture in my room all the time. My dad was like, you're moving your bed again? Yep, I'm going to move it over here. Like as a kid, I couldn't figure out like where I was going to put my desk and where my bed was going to be. And it took me a while to sort of figure that out. And we know this about babies, right? So as parents, if you put your baby in the crib one way, sometimes they will just turn themselves naturally. They're always waking up in a different position because they're self-soothing. They're just tapping into energy that's more favorable for them. Teenagers do this too. Like I have a client who, bless his heart, was showing me his kid's room and he was like, yeah, my son always, this is his bed, but he always ends up sleeping on the floor the other way. And I'm like, well, then why don't you just move his bed?
Yeah, there actually, a lot of people don't realize a lot of Feng Shui is instinctual. Yeah. Right? It feels good. Like if you, part of it, I know you don't have your back to a door. Well, nobody wants their back to a door because you could get snuck up on, right? It's like it's a lot of it. So your instincts, a lot of Chinese things like Feng Shui and those things are based on years and years, centuries of information.
Yes. I mean, the Chinese ancients were amazing at documenting information. But think about all that we have technology, right? We really cannot even conceive a world where there's no technology. All they had to do was observe the environment that they're in and figure out which side of the mountain should I be living on so that my crops grow, and which part of the valley should I be in so that I can have access to water. I mean, the Feng Shui means wind water. That's the literal translation. And when people say like, well, what is Feng Shui? To me, Feng Shui is a support system for our lives. When our lives have support through our physical environment, then it's just much easier for us to achieve the things that we want in life, like well-being and abundance and love and happiness. So even though it has this literal translation of wind water, it really is this ancient study of the natural environment. And when we observe our lives within our environment, then we can create harmony and balance so that we can feel more supported and we can do the things that we want.
I'm always blown away by what the ancients knew, right? Yeah. I mean, and in today's world, so much more anymore, science and everything is just proving what they knew is the real deal. And it always blows me away. How far back does it go? You're a classical student, right? Yes. Of Feng Shui. So how far back? I assume that means ancient technology or the ancient ways or the ancient thoughts and ideas. How far back does it go?
Right. So we're talking about ancient texts that were written over 2,000 years ago. Oh. And so the gentleman who I really subscribe to his perspective is Dr. Stephen Skinner. He is quite the scholar. He's pretty remarkable. His books are amazing. And you'll hear people go, oh, it's over 5,000 years old. That might be true, but the earliest documentation we have is around 2,000 years ago. And so these ancient texts are really what we're using because these formulas were developed and these observations were laid down as the foundation for what we practice today. So although I am naturally intuitive and virtually all of my clients have some type of natural intuition that make them feel like something is off in their life and they're looking for a way to get back into some kind of balance so they can go forward and get to the results that they want in their lives. That's all true. And there's these very significant and time-tested formulas and methods that work that are part of these ancient texts that we use.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you start with people, because I do know some about Feng Shui, I know clutter is one of the easiest ones for people to deal with. And I've seen the results of that. Like if you want to lose weight and your house is cluttered, clean your house. you'll lose the weight. It's amazing. But do you like the Bagua Map or the clutter? Is there a place where you generally start, or tips that you tell people to start with?
Okay, those are two different questions, but I will try to address them both, right? So in classical Feng Shui, there's this concept of emptiness versus fullness. So when we understand this concept of emptiness versus fullness, that your cup has to be empty in order for life to fill it with something, then in our modern world, we can say, oh, you need to declutter. You need to create an empty space in order for what you want to come in. So it just happens to be that the buzzword that we have in modern time is declutter, because especially in the United States, we have so much stuff. We have so much stuff, and our spaces are significantly larger than the rest of the world. We have massive spaces compared to the condos and apartments.
That is. I read an article about this. I don't mean to interject.
It's okay.
But it didn't used to be that way. Houses were smaller, and the reason they started building bigger houses was so that we had places to put our stuff.
Right. George Carlin did a whole skit on that. Like, you go and get stuff, but then your house is full, so you need the house so you can put more of your stuff.
Or you go rent a storage unit and pay to have this stuff storage on a monthly basis that you'll probably never even see.
It's one of the largest growing industries. Is actually, if you do some research, there's one of the largest growing industries in the United States is storage, because we have so much stuff that we don't have a relationship with, that we have to go get a storage space down the street to put our stuff. And maybe we'll visit it once a year, maybe. And that's not really, in my world, that's not really a healthy way to live, because
it's not financially, it's horrible too. It's like, how much do you want to pay? I've watched Storage Wars. I've seen what's in some of those lockers.
Right.
It's not worth paying for.
Right. And sometimes I'll say to my clients, like, I understand that some of this is important to you. And when I look at this, I see money. I see money that you don't have anymore, and you're not, this stuff is broken, it's in disrepair, you don't love it, it's causing you heartache. It doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't belong in your house. I'm pretty straight with my clients. I'm like, nope.
And that is important. One of the most important things in Feng Shui is you have to surround yourself with things that bring you joy, because everything has energy. Am I right?
Yeah, everything has energy. And in my own home, we have a little bit of what's called a love it rule. I'm married, and if we don't both love it, then it doesn't stay in the house. And we've gotten rid of quite a bit of stuff over the years that maybe we loved at the beginning of our marriage, and 10 plus years later, we don't love it anymore. We don't need it. We're carrying it around. It's been sitting in a box for a really long time. It's not something that we're using actively. On our last move, I found wedding gifts that we have never used. And it was like, somebody else can be blessed with this. There's somebody else who can use it. And if it's not part of my active life, then we don't need it.
I have to share a funny story. I first became aware of this concept. I was living in an apartment, and I would get in the elevator, and there would be stuff in the elevator. A pair of salt shakers on the rail, or a painting, or a candlestick. I mean, just stuff. And this was happening all the time. And I was like, what the heck is going on? So one day it just happened that I caught this person putting this stuff in the elevator. And I said, what are you doing? She goes, well, it always disappears. It always goes to somebody that wanted it. And in order for me to get more stuff, I have to get rid of stuff. And so then I coined it praying to the elevator god, is what it was. But I had no concept of that at all.
Yeah.
And it's actually, if you have too much stuff, a lot of people don't want to get rid of it because they're worried it's worth money. I had to deal with this because I had to clear out a whole house and huge garage crammed full of stuff. And it was overwhelming. And a lot of things that were worth a lot of money, I gave away. And from what I understand, just giving it away, the value of giving it away will bring in more value to you. You don't have to worry about selling it.
Right. And you also don't have to, there's also this concept of, I might need it later. It's sort of like dodgy, right? I might need it later. What if I get rid of this thing that my aunt gave me and she comes over and she doesn't see it? She'll think that I don't love her. There's a lot of emotions that also go in with our stuff. So in a lot of ways, it's very psychological. And we think, oh, I have a wardrobe, I'm going to lose 20 pounds and I'm going to wear these things again. No, you're not. You're going to go get something more fashionable. You're not going to wear that again because you're not going to want to think, oh, I can get into this pair of jeans. It's just not going to, you're not going to do that. So it really is important to also address some of the psychological things. When I've had clients who've been hoarders, and I only work with them if they're dealing with a psychologist so that they can address the psychological things. But us regular people have these issues too. We don't have to be a hoarder to see a pile of clutter of stuff, a closet full of things that we just don't use.
We just don't want to hurt people's feelings.
Yes. Yes.
Because, you know, if somebody, my parents actually, God bless them, their parents all went through the depression. Like my grandmother would scoop out the eggshell, you know, gotta get it all because she'd been through, and they just, it's, now this is what I've heard is if you're holding on to it because you think you need it, as soon as you get rid of it, you're going to need it. Well, that's the universe testing you and saying, yeah, okay. But no, you didn't really need it. And if you had kept it, that wouldn't have come up.
Right. The other thing you can do, and this is one of the things I tell my clients, is like treat it like trash bag therapy. You've got a bag for stuff that you're definitely going to get rid of. It's broken, it's in disrepair, you don't need it, you don't use it, you don't love it. Maybe it can be regifted. Then there's this sort of bag of things that you really love. They work, they bring you, you know, they support your life, you love them. It's something that's important to you that you want to retain in your life and it's functional. Great. So there's two distinct piles there, and you've got this like third dodgy pile, and it does sort of have this accumulation of what if I need it? So the thing to do with this is what I tell my clients: get a box, put this dodgy third pile of stuff in it, put a date on it, get on your device, put a 6-month calendar reminder on your calendar, go back to that box in 6 months. If you have not opened that box in 6 months, you've just trained yourself and taught yourself that it's not a need. You do not need it.
Yikes. That's great advice. I need lots of boxes. No.
You've got
what do you tell
things
people who
going on
have
there.
what do you tell them when they have the issue of who gave it to them? But if they really don't like it, but it's there because great aunt Edna passed it on, and that's
not a conversation I have with my clients. I sort of leave that to somebody who's a professional in general, because I'm not a psychiatrist and I'm not a therapist and it's not my area of expertise, but that usually is something emotional that they need to address. But I also have my own belief system. My own belief system is that person's energy is in another dimension and will love you whether you have the thing that they gave you or not. Because they're in a different dimension and they see things differently. But that's my own.
That's basically what I think too.
Yeah.
Do you go into the Bagua Map? Do you deal with that a lot? Is that important with the way you're doing things?
Actually, it is. It's just a different concept than what people are typically familiar with. So the Bagua Map that is most commonly seen is often known as the Life Aspirations Map, where you have a career corner and a romance corner and a creativity corner and a love sector or a family sector, health sector. And that particular Life Aspirations Map is more of a Western Feng Shui concept, a more intuitive Feng Shui concept. And it's also laid onto a property based on the door. And that's actually not the classical application of the Bagua. So there's actually two different Baguas. There's a early heaven Bagua and a later heaven Bagua. And so in classical Feng Shui, we use the orientation of the property in the timing in order to determine how the Bagua is laid. So it's actually very specific. I use a compass called a Lopan, which is an amazing device, and it's very intricate, and it measures the orientation, the specific direction of how the energy is coming in. It's like accurate to 1/2 degree. And that has all kinds of amazing wealth formulas on it, and it has formulas for how to direct energy to bring it into the property. So really what I'm doing in my practice is first thing is I'm looking at the exterior. So how does the energy flow in the land? The concept is that qi, or energy, it rides on the wind and it stops at the boundary of water. So wind, water, feng shui. So we're measuring and assessing how the energy is in the land, where the road is, where the water is, where the building is next to you, where the mountains and the hills are, how the energy is flowing in and around your specific environment. And then we measure how it goes into the property and the qi flow inside the property. That's one aspect. The next aspect is then looking at the people. So not only is it the exterior energy and the interior energy, it's also the people. So we have our own individual energy that we correspond or connect with or resonate with the energy ourselves. And then there's timing. So those are really the three factors that I work with. So the Bagua is just a tool in all of the things that I work with in classical Feng Shui. That was a very long answer to your question.
No, that was fascinating.
So if I'm not sure I'm comfortable with my purple drapes, that's not going to necessarily utilize your expertise.
Not really. That's not really the kind of work that I do. And I talk to clients about this because, oh, I want you to help me decorate. Actually, personally, I work with energetics. Aesthetics is not my jam. And so this is why when people contact me, they're looking for clarity because there's something that they're feeling is off energetically in their life. And what that tells me is they're not aligned or resonating with energy that's supportive to them. So my role is to help them understand how to get into better alignment to the hot spots in their space that are going to be supportive. So they can feel better. Sort of like, well, now we're all working from home, or I was working from home before this, but now everyone's working from home all the time. And if you are someone who's now working from home and that's sort of newer to you, although we're all comfortable with it in the last year, you've got a Wi-Fi router and you've got a big space and you've got an important meeting, you've got to be on, everything needs to go really smoothly, you've got a presentation, you're going to go to the part of the house where the Wi-Fi is the strongest, where you're not going to get interrupted, where you're going to be supported, you're going to be quiet, there's no one's going to be bothering you, so that you can be at your best. This is the same idea with Feng Shui. We want to put people in the hot spots of their home where the energy is the strongest and most supportive for them, so they can rest. People, I mean, really, when you get a good night's sleep, you feel like you can take on the world, right? So sleep well, think clearly, study for kids to be able to study and be able to retain information, for us to work in spaces where we can focus and be productive. So a lot of times with Feng Shui, people go, oh, I want the whole enchilada. Sometimes you only get the nachos, and your nachos may just be your bed, your doors, your desk, your water features, specific parts of your home. And those are the main components that I'm working with my clients.
So yeah, that's amazing. So it's locating the furniture and the fixtures so that the energy flows and the people benefit most from being in that energy. So just so I'm clear, it's making sure the couch is in the right place, because
it can be. I mean, that's one aspect of it, right? So it's never one thing. Usually it's more than one thing. It can be that the couch needs to be turned so that you're actually using a more favorable direction for you personally. So it can just simply be that it's not just the couch needs to be moved because the chi, it's blocking the flow of chi, which is certainly important, right? If there's a physical obstacle to the chi moving, that can be one component. Another component can be that your personal energy is more aligned with facing a different direction when you're working. Or you're watching TV.
It brings to mind Big Bang Theory and Sheldon with his spot on the couch.
This is I love Big Bang Theory. So he's like looking around the room where the airflow is going to go. No, I don't like this perspective. No, there's a draft. This is my spot.
Yeah, I think Sheldon should have done Feng Shui, because he
probably was doing it naturally. He was just, this is my spot. I'm going to thrive in this spot. Everyone's going to know it. And people do kind of have that, right? So when you are in a family dynamic, dad's got his chair, mom's got her chair, kids are over here. And when that person is not in their right chair, like maybe there's a guest and the guest comes and sits in dad's chair and everyone's like, oh, sitting in dad's chair feels awkward because they've claimed their energy spot. And sometimes it's a good energy spot and sometimes it's not.
I do that. I tend to go to the same place all the time, right? And if somebody's sitting there or my dog jumps in that spot, it's like, dude, you got to move. That's where I sit.
Yep. And we also do this with shopping, right? So every store has like a chain, right? Your grocery store, there's 4 grocery stores in the store. Why do you go to the one grocery store that's 10 miles away instead of the one that's 3 miles away? Because you like the one that's 10 miles away. You feel comfortable there. You like the way it's laid out. People seem happy there. Maybe the produce seems like it even looks better when it's there instead of the one that's closer, because you're resonating with energy just walking into the door that's more favorable for you. You go to just that one restaurant that you go to instead of the one that's closer. This is what I mean. Like, big corporations are using feng shui, and we're going to naturally attract the energy that's supportive to us.
So let me understand this. So if I brought you in as a consultant and you found out where my house was pointed, and I live on a lake, so there's obviously some kind of flow going on with that lake, and there's a road up by that. Anyway, you figure all that out, and we adjust some things inside the house. Is there fine tuning that then needs to be done, or do you pretty much get it right out of the gate?
Depends on the formula, right? Depends on actually the system that we're using. Some systems work very quickly. There's a system called flying stars that's very common. People talk about flying stars every year because everyone wants to talk about the energy of the year. That's super common. So flying stars actually work very quickly. Some formulas are actually wealth building formulas or other formulas that take time to accumulate.
Formula? Is this like a mathematical thing, or is this?
It's an alignment of chi thing. It's actually really fascinating where you put the water, where you put the door, where something specific will go to tap into energy to connect it. It's really, really interesting.
Wow.
I test almost everything that I do.
In your eyes when you talk about it, you just light up. So
yeah, and I have to say, I have learned a fair bit about feng shui, like different books, different people talking about it. And you're making me feel like I know nothing. Like you know a lot of stuff. I'm impressed. Like I've never heard of these, and I also stalked you a tiny bit, and I saw just a tiny bit. There's only a couple websites. I saw that you talked about once the 3 lux.
Yeah. So this is a really fundamental concept in Chinese metaphysics. There's a few, right? There's the 5 elements that people also talk about, the 5 elements quite a bit: water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. And this is a concept that's used in all of the 5 Chinese arts. So it could be Chinese medicine, can be acupuncture, qigong. 5 elements is core. Also yin and yang, the polarity of light and dark, sun and moon, left and right. So yin and yang is also an important concept. Another fundamental concept is the Chinese view on luck. Luck is not random. Luck is cultivated and nurtured, the idea that preparation meets opportunity. So the more that you prepare, when the opportunity comes, you can be ready for it. And this comes from something called Tian Di Run, which is heaven or sky, Di is earth or land, and Run is human being or human luck. So heaven luck, earth luck, and human luck. And so this is what's known as a little bit like a cosmic trinity. And that's really where this sort of originates from. And heaven luck is what you're born with. It's sort of your fate, if you will. It's what you're most likely to be mandated by heaven. It will not make you materially wealthy. People are born at the same day and time all over the world, but someone's fate or someone's experience, if they're born in Canada or born in Mexico or born in India or born in Australia or here in the United States, can be very different because of the environment that they're born into. That's your earth luck. So earth luck is your environment, your land, your space, your home, your physical environment. And human luck, it's called man luck, but I don't like to use the word, it's human luck, right? This is what we create for ourselves. This is what we cultivate. These are our free will. So we really have like 33% of each. We have 33% heaven, 33% earth, 33% human luck. So from my perspective, we have about 2/3 of what we can control. I mean, when we're children, we're born into what we're born into. We have our families. We don't have a lot of independence. But as we get older, we become teenagers and young adults. We go, I want to live here. I want to go here. These are things I want to do. We have more free will to choose the environment that we want to be in and make very clear choices about how we want to live. So the experiences that we have, this is also a Chinese metaphysics idea, that the experiences that we have as we age and as we go through life influence how we make decisions in the future. It doesn't mean that you have to forget your past. You can learn from your past and make an informed choice moving forward. This is all about what luck is. So when you put this together, you can really influence your luck. It's not random. You can make choices, you can make decisions, and you can cultivate your destiny.
The picture.
So how does this play in? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, the picture that was coming into my head as you're describing that is like this funnel, right? And I'm tuning this funnel for prosperity and opportunities to come my way.
Right. I mean, we have this idea here in the West that luck is like, oh, you won the lottery, lucky you, or oh, you stepped off the sidewalk right before the bus came barreling down the road and you didn't get hit, like, oh, lucky you. That is not, that's the Western view of luck that we have, but really Eastern view of luck is you work hard, you focus on the thing that you're really good at, you sort of figure that out, and you get really good. And then when the opportunities come, you're ready for them. And they come all the time, but we're not paying attention to them because we're not ready. And that's a very different way to live.
Yeah, like what's for you will not go past you.
Right. So there's this idea that what is meant for you will go around the world if it has to get to you, or you can be ready for it and then it can come to you faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fast.
So are there any things, like, because you have all these new things, right, that I haven't heard before. Is there a way for people, is there something that we can start implementing? Like, is there a place where you would give us some tips where people who don't even know as much as I do, like that are totally lost, where they could start?
Sure. I mean, I would love people to stay in touch with me because I actually put out a newsletter twice a month, and the beginning of the month newsletter is me talking about the energy of the month, so we can have an idea of like the kind of energy in the season that we're in, so we know how to interact with it. And then I also talk about case studies and services and things that I think are interesting in Feng Shui in the second part of the month. I also talk about workshops and stuff. In addition to that, so people can sign up for that on my website. And I also have something called the 8 Mansions Toolkit, which is a really wonderful resource. And I'm happy to share this with your audience. The toolkit is really interesting because you can go and you can calculate what's called your life gua. And your life gua is a number that puts you into an East group or a West group. So it's a little bit of a, it has a little bit of a polarity component to it. And it tells you what your good directions are. You have 4 good directions and 4 bad, quote, good or bad directions. You can start using them. You can start facing a good direction for work. You can start sleeping in a good direction when you're in bed. You can start putting your kid in a good direction when they're studying. You can start having conversations with people that are important to you for relationships in one of your good directions. If you're going on a date, use one of your good directions, go to the meeting place early and go figure out what direction you're. I mean, it's not hard. All of our devices have a compass on them these days to just go, oh, what direction am I in? And, you know, if your good direction is south, go figure out what south is and go face that, and then go meet with that person and see how it goes.
I have a question. If you're trying to align how you're sleeping, is that like, if you're on your back, is that where your feet are? Like, or is it if you're on the crown
chakra of your head? It's where your head is pointing. So you're backward, right? So it's your feet is the opposite direction. So it's always the crown chakra, because when you're sleeping, this chakra is going to do the activation.
So it doesn't matter if you're on one side or the other side, as long as your head is in the same direction. That's
correct, right? My master teacher, my grandmaster teacher, Yap Cheng Hai, he was known for saying something along the lines of, you can give a homeless person a good direction to sleep in and you can change their luck. Doesn't mean that they're going to, you know, they're going to become millionaires overnight, but maybe what you will do for them is connect them with somebody who can help them, who can be a nobleman for them. Noblemen are helpful people. Maybe someone will come and offer them a job or help them with something that they need and can help shift their luck.
Wow, that's fascinating. So those what did you call it? The
8 mansions.
8 mansions.
8 mansions is a system. I'm sorry?
That's on your website.
It is on the website, and I can actually make sure to share.
It won't go in the chat. I don't know that they'll be able to see it on Facebook, but I will make sure the link to your website is on today's show page at www.lifemasteryradio.net or .com, and you can go there and click and search around for the 8 mansions.
It's in the information library, so it's actually really easy to find. So on my website, I have a section that says information library, and there's a drop down with all kinds of articles and stuff, and there's one that says 8 mansions toolkit. And it's kind of fun because knowing what the right thing to do can be hard in Feng Shui. So instead of trying to figure out all of these ancient concepts, this is a really simple system. It's actually originally it's used for doors. So the system will say, you have 4 good directions, and you really should be using a door in that direction. That's really the foundational component of it. And in our modern environment, it's also used for sitting and facing and such. And so if instead of being confused, this toolkit will tell you, it calculates your gua for you. You can get all the information. Super interesting. And if people have questions, they can always ask me.
So it's not only the rearranging of things and items and you know, getting that flow going, but it's also incorporating new things. I listened to a story you had today about when you and your husband purchased a fountain, and the minute that fountain was in, things changed. Is that?
Yeah, that was actually when I was doing private one-on-one mentoring with my teacher. And so she was like, okay, well, you can put a fountain over here. And I was like, oh, really? And so we did the calculation. We went through the whole, we got a floor plan. We put exactly where it was going to go to know right at the right timing of when to put it in. And so this is kind of a big deal. I also built a walkway. So it wasn't just one thing. I built a walkway. I used 4 formulas to build this special walkway. And so then I built the walkway and I installed the fountain. And so there's a lot of things happening. And the day that we turned this fountain on, I was actually this is when I was back when working at a day job, like trying to learn Feng Shui at the same time. So my husband's at home supervising this whole elaborate, and I was like really nervous, like it has to be just right. It has to be just the right. And I set the pad of the fountain like at a very specific angle. It's called a precious and jewel line. I mean, I was really putting as much into this as I possibly could because I kind of had one shot. And I was doing it under the supervision of my master teacher. And so I'm at work and he never calls me. He was like texting me. He's like, you got to call me right now. I was like, oh my God, something's wrong. Right. So I call my husband. I was like, what's going on? He was like, you'll never believe what happened. I was like, what? Did something go wrong with the installation? He's like, no, we installed the fountain and 20 minutes later, I got a call for the job that I've been trying to get for like a year. I can't believe it. Like these are some of the things that can happen very quickly. Sometimes it feels like a rubber band. Like if you've been stretched really thin and things are not going your way, sometimes it feels like snap, things come together really bad. And I call it a kick. So when things are really bad, sometimes it feels like you get the kick that you need, the energy.
And that's just tweaking something, right? You just tweak or tune or, right?
Well, it was more than a tune. I mean, it's like an align. I mean, it's fine tuning is something I do with my clients every year, right? So I meet with my clients every year to fine tune the stuff that we've done foundationally. That particular fountain was like a foundational thing. And it was, but things were, I mean, at that time, things were not great. And sometimes for women, they're like, come do my Feng Shui, but we can't tell my husband. Well, how are we going to do this? Maybe we should talk about your relationship first. Because I might tell you to do some things and it might be more beneficial for your spouse if you do something. Well, we can't tell him. Well, then this might not be for you. But sometimes when the spouse gets bought in, it's like everything kind of like a pomegranate, like you kind of crack it open, you get all the juicy stuff inside. And so that was sort of the experience for my husband, because I also said to him, honey, we need to move the bed. This is also early in my training. Honey, we're sleeping on the wrong wall. Like, this is when I'm learning all this. We got to move the bed. He was like, no, we can't move the bed. It's not going to fit on the wall. And this is what people think. We go, oh, the architectural intent is for the bed to be on this wall. And so this is where it needs to be. And people don't often think that, you know, babies turn themselves, but we don't think that we should turn ourselves. We just go, oh, this is where the bed goes. Like, this is the only wall it can go on. Not if your life sucks. So we have a water leak in the house. We have to go through renovation. And finally I was like, honey, we got to move the bed. Are you bought in now? Like, we're having this water issue. Can we please move the bed? He's like, well, the both nightstands won't fit, right? Because there's also this idea, like, you have to have 2 nightstands, one on each side of the bed, or you're going to have imbalance. That's also a myth, right? I was like, I'll go without a nightstand. I don't need a nightstand. It's totally fine. I just need to sleep in the bed in a good direction. So I finally get him to agree to turn the bed. And by the way, both nightstands fit. Just saying. I was like, they will fit. No, they won't. Yes, they will. And they totally fit. We turn the bed, we start sleeping. And around 3 days later, things started to really shift, because we had been sleeping on something called a weeping formation. And I got my first TV spot. I have a client who's a TV producer, and she was like, come do a TV spot. I want you to come, blah, 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 talk about Feng Shui. And then shortly after that, he had something else happen at work that he was like really excited about, that he was like, oh, I've been waiting for this. So, and then shortly after that, it's like multiple things. It's never one thing. That was before, I think that might've been before the water fountain got installed. Shortly after that at my day job, I got a bonus with like a bunch of extra zeros in my paycheck. And he was like, oh, cha-ching, there's something to this Feng Shui.
So you convinced him. He realized it too?
Yeah, I mean, I think at first he just wanted to support me. I think at first he was like,
Right.
oh, honey,
No, I get
whatever
it.
makes you happy, right? Happy wife, happy life. But then when he started to feel and see sort of more tangible results, he was like, okay, what are we doing next?
So if someone like me is planning to get a piece of property and build a house, I'm going to have to give you a call.
That'd be great. Right. Yeah. Then you can figure out if the property is suitable for you. If there's something going on in the land that needs to be addressed, you can orient the property on the land. This Feng Shui really is about like building your dream home, because you have more of an opportunity to assess getting more good stuff. Because when we buy properties, we buy them, they're situated the way they are. We think that we like the floor plan. You know, it's got the features that we want, 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, like it's got the features that we want. It might be in a nice located area near a school or something that is important for our lives, like restaurants and hotels and grocery stores and things like that. Those feel like the things that are really important. But then when we get in them and our lives start to fall apart, we don't always know that that's the feng shui not working for us, that we're sleeping in a room that's not suitable, that the entry door is not suitable, that the pool is in the wrong place. And some things are not fixable because they're really costly. If the kitchen is in the wrong place and that's the wealth generator of in your home, someone's sick or there's a problem with your finances, it's unlikely because of the cost to move your kitchen. So then we have to see if there's anything else that can be done.
There are things that you can fix, though, little tweaks and things. I had heard before, for like in an office, a lot of people like to either face the door or face the window, and you're screwed either way if you don't want either one at your back. But I had heard if you had a picture of a mountain to add to that, or like not having blue in your bathroom because there's too much water, like balancing things. Is that stuff?
That's not really stuff I subscribe to, because again, it's a little bit more Western, intuitive.
Okay, I've been reading the wrong books.
Well, I know the wrong books. I mean, here's the thing. I started that way. The truth is I started with that. I started with BTB Feng Shui, and I was with a particular teacher, and bless her heart, I feel so incredibly lucky to have had her in my life. But there came a point where for me, I got hungrier. I was like, this cannot make sense. Big companies don't put Bagua mirrors on the side of their buildings to chase negative energy away. That didn't really make sense to me. And so I started to go like, well, there's got to be more to this. And that's how, for me, I felt like I needed something that would hold in a different way. For me, I felt like with the Western feng shui that I was doing, where I started, I felt like I was always maintaining it. And that was not practical for me. It just was more work that I wanted to put into it. I'm willing to do things once or twice a year that need a change, that need small fine tuning. That seems really reasonable to me. And that's generally how I work with most of my clients. I have a few VIP clients that I work with on a monthly basis who are really ambitious, and they usually have businesses, and we do some individual stuff every month. But in general, people are usually willing to do something once or twice a year to address the yearly energy, to do some fine tuning for the yearly energy. And sometimes, depending on the month's energy, they may be willing to make a change once or twice a month in a year. And
Heather and I were kind of on the same wavelength, because as you were describing that, I got this picture. So what was it? You put the fountain in its place, you arrange the path, so did that redirect energy or attract energy?
So again, so one is redirection. So the pathway was angled in a very specific way to lead the energy in a very specific angle, to guide it where it's supposed to go to the door, because it was a very rectilinear walkway that was built with the property. And I made an angled walkway at a very specific angle that worked. And feng shui, wind, chi rides on the wind and it stops at the boundary of water. So I had to create a watery boundary so it would stop and collect, and then it was activated.
So it wouldn't just go at the back of the house.
It just wouldn't dissipate. It collected at the front of the house.
Okay.
Yeah. So here I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and like virtually everybody has a pool. I don't have a pool, but it feels like every third house has a pool or more. And sometimes the pools are well placed. That kind of volume of water in respect to the relationship to the house can be a wealth generator, and sometimes it's not. And
what happens if it's not? It's a drain for the.
It can just cause other obstacles. It can activate energy that's not so helpful. sometimes it's innocuous. Sometimes it's activating energy that's innocuous and it's not bad. It's not harmful. It's just not super helpful. But if you're really ambitious, what I have found if you're ambitious, you're like, I want to use everything that I can in the most optimum way to have as many opportunities as I can. Is everything going to be perfect all the time? No, that's not how life is. We're going to have challenges so we can grow. But if you have support and you have opportunities to get help, then things are just easier.
See, I always thought,
ladies, we only have about 5 minutes left. This just flew by. I had an absolute blast. Oh my gosh, there's so much. My brain is just cranking. But something I always like to ask my guests is, you shared with us some of your personal testimonials. Does a testimonial from one of your clients just jump out that you would like to share with us? Something that was incredible that happened after working with them or doing a particular thing?
Well, they're on my website. There's a business case study for a client that I worked with actually during the pandemic. And so he has a really interesting story because he is quite the motivated financial professional and was very specific about how he wanted to grow his business and the things he wanted to change. And he was introduced to me through his wife. And so when I went to the home, it was very clear that there were some energy spots that were not working. There were some clutter issues that needed to be dealt with. But what was going on was he was using space that was not supportive to him. So once we got him using an office space that was more supportive to him and getting him using a door that was more supportive and doing a few other small, it was really advanced technique to connect energy in the home, he really saw some results very quickly. And he really understood that Feng Shui was a tool, a resource, in addition to all the other things that he's doing. He's doing affirmations, he's doing the emotional work, he's doing the business work, he's really putting himself out there and using Feng Shui as another tool in his toolbox to advance. And so from my perspective, his results were really remarkable because he had a significant jump in his clientele and in the work that he was doing, that it was in his home, right? So he's working in his house. He doesn't have like another outside space. So it was like a twofer because not only did other relationships go well, he also did well in his business. So that was, I felt like that was a good example of how things worked for him. And he was very compliant. I have to say, my clients who are compliant and do things that I tell them to do typically have better results. If I tell you to do 10 things and you call me and you're like, it's not working, and I want to go, well, what did you do? I didn't do items 9, 7, 8, 5. Those are just too inconvenient. Then don't tell me it didn't work because I gave you a path and you didn't do it. So my clients that are very compliant and do the things that I instruct them to do, they typically have better results.
well, you certainly tipped everything I thought I knew about Feng Shui on its head. And
I hope that's a good thing.
It is. It just makes me go like, okay, I thought I was going to be able to do some of this myself, and now I don't think I can.
I think that people try, and sometimes, and that's okay. I tried too, right? I just felt like it wasn't enough, or I wanted more. And then when you get to a point where you're feeling stuck or you feel like something's confusing and you need help, that's why you call a professional. Same reason why you call a doctor. You're not feeling good, things aren't going right. You ask for a different perspective and you implement what they say. Nice.
Do you have one last parting shot, Jillian, for our listeners? Some word of advice, some action for them to take?
Well, first of all, we need to keep the good energy flowing. And my perspective on that is that we need much more kindness and compassion. I read Chinese astrology charts and everybody's completely unique. Like Western astrology charts are like something like 500 charts. Chinese astrology is like 13 million different kinds of charts that you can have available. People are so unique and they're walking such an individual path. And if you can give someone kindness, it can make a huge difference to them.
It's something that compassion, especially, and understanding. It's just like, where did it go? People just threw it out the window, I think.
It's coming back. Don't sweat it. We're going to get it in period 9.
Totally. I always say that we never know how we don't want to be until we get there.
Right. And right now we're in a learning phase and it's going to be shifting. Yeah.
Heather, thank you so much. What's a big takeaway that you had today with our guest, Jillian?
I'm going to have to hire her before I build a house.
I would love that. It would be my honor. It would be a pleasure.
Have you ever done that with somebody building a house? Have you ever consulted with them as
I did a case with my master teacher. So the kinds of clients that I work with typically are not like wanting to build a dream home. Usually they're too stuck to get to that point quite yet. So most of what people call me for, I bought a house, things are not working, my business isn't working. So we're trying to fix things, not so much building a dream home, although it is absolutely in my wheelhouse because that's part of what classical feng shui is about, is getting it right. And I have a huge network, so we can crawl on amazing professionals if we need. Bring in an architect or bring in extra support. So it can absolutely be done.
Well, ladies, thank you so much. I think this was a really cool show. I think we created some great content. Thank you, Heather, my friend, my newfound friend. I'm sure we'll do this again. Did you have a blast?
I did have a blast. And yes, anytime you want me to, emails, slow way to get hold of me. I took 5 hours to get back to you. So
Jillian, did you have a blast? This was
great.
Was a great show. You
guys have great questions. I really enjoyed chatting with you, and I hope that you all found it valuable, and that maybe we can talk again. I'd love to talk about Chinese New Year.
I'd love to have you back. I think there's so much more to talk about. That's about all we have time for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please tell a friend about it. Just tell them to go to lifemasteryradio.net or .com, or check out the Facebook page and stay informed. We have a newsletter. Sign up for that newsletter and you will know who's been on the show, who's coming on the show. And Jackie, my regular co-host, always does a blog post about the show. So check it out. Go to the website. Lastly, please choose to go and check out Jillian's website. Find those 8 mansions and get started today. And please, please, please make it a great day, because it is all about choice. Bye-bye for now.